China shipped 90% of every humanoid robot delivered globally last year. 90%. And right now, as you're watching this, those robots are already on factory floors, already working shifts, already replacing human labor at a scale the rest of the world hasn't even begun to process. But I assure you, the real story lies in the classified details the media conveniently avoid talking about. Because this isn't just about robots doing cool tricks. This is about a country that figured out how to use a 1,500-year-old martial art to solve the hardest engineering problem in modern history, and then quietly deployed the solution before anyone noticed. But amidst all the headlines and the viral clips and the hype, China did something impossible with just one decision, one move that changed the trajectory of the global robotics race forever. And almost nobody caught it. But before we get into that, I need you to first understand how we actually got here. Because this didn't happen overnight, and the timeline matters. China's government publishes Made in China 2025 inches, a national industrial strategy targeting dominance in 10 sectors. Robotics is number 1 on the list, not number 3. Not an honorable mention. Number 1. But here's the thing. At that point, China was still importing most of its industrial robots from Japan, Germany, and South Korea. They were behind. Everyone knew it. The West wasn't worried. Beijing's Ministry of Industry and Information Technology announces a new target: thousands of humanoid robots deployed in farms, factories, and homes by 2025. Western analysts laugh it off. Humanoid robots that can actually work? That's science fiction. Boston Dynamics had been trying for decades. But here's where things get interesting. A company out of Hangzhou called Unitree Robotics starts shipping a humanoid robot called the H1. Price tag $90,000. Still expensive, still limited. But it moves, it balances. It doesn't fall over every 5 minutes. Engineers start paying attention. Now, while all this was going on, something else was happening underneath the surface. China's EV manufacturers, BYD, Geely, XPeng, had spent the previous decade building the most efficient hardware supply chain on Earth. Motors, actuators, battery management systems, precision manufacturing at a scale no other country had attempted. And those same engineers, those same factories, those same supply chains were now being pointed directly at robotics. Unitree drops the G1 model. $16,000. Less than a fifth of the H1. The robotics world stops and stares. Goldman Sachs publishes a report saying manufacturing costs fell 40% in a single year, more than double what they had projected. That same year, China registers 5,688 humanoid robotics patents. The United States registers 1,483, almost 4 times as many, in 1 year. Now listen closely, because what I'm going to say next brings everything together. July 2025, Unitree releases the R1 humanoid robot. Price, $5,900. The global robotics industry goes into a quiet panic. Because at $5,900, a humanoid robot is now cheaper than a few months of minimum wage labor in most developed economies. The math on human labor just changed permanently, and China was the only country positioned to exploit it. February 16, 2026. 1 billion people sit down to watch China's Spring Festival Gala, their Super Bowl, except the entire country watches it, every single year, without exception. And then the robots walk out. We know China had been building toward this moment for years. But this? Nah. Now this was different in a way nobody had prepared for. Unitree's G1 and H1 units performed what experts immediately called the world's first fully autonomous humanoid robot cluster martial arts routine. Not choreographed, not on rails, autonomous. 20 robots moving as one, spinning kicks, aerial flips, nunchucks, synchronized drunken fist boxing. Live, in front of 1 billion viewers. One unit executed a 7.5 rotation aerial spin. Another performed consecutive single-leg backflips. A third picked up a wooden staff and actually fought, with a teenage student from the Hanan Tagu Martial Arts School. You see, what made this different from every other robot demo you've ever seen was fault recovery. These robots were being shoved, bumped, thrown off balance, and they were catching themselves in real time, mid-routine, without stopping, without falling. That's not entertainment. That's a technical breakthrough dressed up as a TV segment. But here's the part that might actually interest you. A week before the gala, Agibot, another Chinese firm, released footage that got a fraction of the attention but told the more important story. They sent their Lingxi X2 humanoid robots to the Shaolin Temple, the 1,500-year-old birthplace of Kung Fu, and filmed them training alongside actual monks, mirroring their stances, absorbing their forms, palm strikes, sweeping combinations, techniques those monks had spent years developing, being processed by a machine in a controlled outdoor courtyard. Why did China send robots to Shaolin, you ask? Well, it all boils down to a specific engineering problem they needed to solve. Kung Fu, as a physical discipline, demands exactly the capabilities that make a humanoid robot useful in the real world: dynamic balance mid-movement, multi-directional force generation, rapid stance transitions, and fault recovery when something goes wrong. A robot that can execute drunken fist and recover from a shove without hitting the ground is a robot you can put next to a human worker on an assembly line and trust not to injure anyone. China didn't teach robots Kung Fu to impress you. They used Kung Fu to stress test engineering solutions. Then they put the results on national television. To put into context just how deliberate this was, Unitree's CEO Wang Xingxing said publicly after the gala, "The core of intelligent robotics is not flashy demonstrations, but ensuring that technology serves people." He's not talking about entertainment. He's telling you exactly what the Shaolin footage and the Spring Festival performance actually were. A proof of concept for real-world deployment broadcast to 1 billion people as a signal to the rest of the world. But did the spectacle overshadow the deployment? Well, no, it only accelerated it. According to multiple sources and market research firms, by the time those robots were performing on stage in February 2026, they were already working in factories. Unitree's robots were on active production lines at BYD and Geely, two of the world's largest EV manufacturers, not as experiments, not being observed by engineers, as workers, doing shifts, moving components, handling material sorting, running quality inspections. Uptech Robotics had signed deployment agreements with Siemens, Foxconn, Audi, and BYD. And in early 2026, they signed with Airbus, making it the first humanoid robot deployment in aviation manufacturing anywhere in the world. Not American, not European, Chinese. Few areas reported friction. The software, as even Unitree's own CEO admitted, hasn't fully caught up with the hardware. Real autonomy in unpredictable environments remains genuinely difficult. A robot that nails a 7.5 aerial spin can still struggle with a door handle it hasn't encountered before. But even if the software still has room to grow, the production scale had already made the outcome inevitable. March 2026. A factory in Guangdong, operated by Leizhu Robotics, begins operations. This single facility produces one complete humanoid robot every 30 minutes, from one building. That factory's annual capacity represents 70% of the entire global humanoid robot market from the year before. Tesla, Figure AI, and Boston Dynamics combined cannot match that production pace. Meanwhile, Unitree is raising $580 million to build a new facility targeting 75,000 units per year. Agibot has rolled out its 10,000th robot. TrendForce projects Chinese humanoid production grows 94% through 2026. The government's official target, 100,000 deployed humanoids by 2027. Not manufactured, deployed, working. If you do the math, I'm sure you can tell this isn't a country catching up anymore. The only question left to answer right now is, can anyone else replicate what China just did? Other countries are taking notice. The US government flagged China's robotics dominance in a 2024 official report. European manufacturers are launching pilots. Tesla is scaling Optimus production, but even if they wanted to make the same moves China made, they aren't likely to succeed at the same speed. And here's why. The conditions that enabled this aren't exportable. First, the supply chain. Unitree manufactures its own motors, sensors, and reducers in-house. Key component suppliers are within a 2-hour drive. Many are ex-DJI and ex-BYD engineers who've already built hardware at impossible scale. When Unitree needs to redesign an arm, they have new parts in 2 days. In the US or Europe, that same change takes 6 to 8 weeks. In robotics, iteration speed is everything, and China has structurally locked it in. Second, the demand side. BYD, CATL, Foxconn. The world's largest manufacturers are Chinese, and they're also the world's largest potential buyers of humanoid robots. That closed loop between producer and customer doesn't exist anywhere else. Third, the price floor. At $5,900 for a functional humanoid, China has set a price that Western manufacturers, with their higher labor and component costs, structurally cannot match right now. If other countries try to copy what China did, they're more likely to replicate only the investment and not its outcomes. And here's something no one actually talks about. While the Kung Fu performance was the moment everyone remembers, the real inflection point wasn't on that stage. It was the decision years earlier to point the entire EV supply chain at robotics, to treat humanoid robots not as a research project, but as a manufacturing problem, to use Kung Fu, of all things, as a technical testing framework, not a PR stunt. In fact, the Chinese embassy in Washington posted unprompted on social media, "You can't imagine how fast Chinese humanoid robots are evolving." That's not a company flexing. That's a government telling another government something it needs to hear. So, is this the moment the global robotics race was decided? Or is the West closer than the numbers suggest? The robots learned Kung Fu, then they went to work, and the rest of the world is only just starting to ask the right questions.